Hi, this is R.N. Bhaskar from BKBB. That's an acronym for Bhaskar Ki Business Baatein. It's a channel that brings you policy analysis, short story, business stories, and an occasional conversation once every week. But right now, at 8:15 in the morning, we have news behind the news, where we look at headlines and we talk about important developments and analyze them. Today, I have with me my co-anchors, that is Katya.
Yes, sir.
Welcome, Katya. And I've got Anurag. Welcome, Anurag. And before I go on to the titles, let me remind you the usual reminders. Click the subscribe button, click the like button, please. And if you can, tell all your friends about it because we need to grow our audience much more. And now we come to the headlines that we'll be talking about today. The three headlines are Trump digs in deeper, and the US may get involved in the war, causing a huge conflagration there. The second is a very, very interesting and important question, which is about banks are expanding the branches but are not expanding the ATM network. Why? And the third one is the Indian economy with mixed signals. Trade deficit has actually come down. Why? And unfortunately, unemployment has gone up. Let's take the first story first. The first story is quite disturbing. America decided to send in a fleet of, the picture shows it. You can see aerial refueling aircraft to the Middle East. And the reason is very simple. The map below that will tell you that Israel does not have a common border with Iran. It's about 1,000 kilometers. And most of its planes can't go more than 300 kilometers. So you need to refuel the planes above so that they can get refueled and go into Iran and actually start bombing them there. Well, the strategy may work, but given the fact that Israel has already shot down 3 F-35 aircraft of the US are more sophisticated in its range, we expect that these planes also get shot. Significantly, there's a second development, and that is the aircraft carrier, which was supposed to be for the Chinese waters to create trouble there, are now returning in the Middle East. Again, as past experience has shown, any aircraft carrier can be easy target for the Houthis. Expect trouble there. And now it's clear that one reason why Israel could pinpoint the areas which they had to bomb was because IAEA, under the guise of inspection, sent the actual locations of each of the places which they had inspected. All of a sudden, the world has become collusive. It accuses Iran of not agreeing to removal of all its enriched uranium, and forgets the fact that Israel has nuclear weapons undeclared and does not remain a signatory to the NPT, while Iran is a signatory to the NPT. And last point, people who say that Iran is actually developing the bombs, nuclear bombs, forget that Iran does not want to develop any nuclear bombs. The same way as during the Iraq-Iran war, when USA gave Iraq chemical weapons to be used against Iran, Iran said, no, we will not make chemical weapons because we think it's haram, it's wrong, the same way as I think the nuclear missiles are wrong. So suddenly the moral players in the world are Russia, Iran, China. The US is besmirched in blood, deceit, lies, and you can see the results there. Anyway, we go to the second story, and the second story is by Katya. Katya, please come.
So this is an interesting development, sir. The good news is that the number of bank branches are expanding. Either it's because of small finance banks which actually want to go a little more aggressive and go to newer areas to cover a lot more ground, because India is fairly underbanked if you look at it on that way. But or even larger banks expanding their footprint into semi-urban and rural areas. Bank branches have been going at a very interesting pace. If you look at the FY21 data of branches, there has been a substantial number of branch increase, by thousands. But if you look at it comes to ATMs, the very banks that are expanding their footprint, they are very, very lackadaisical when it comes to adding ATMs. ATM number, in fact, has actually stayed where it was, almost where it was, with a few additions here and there. If you see the growth is in the hundreds zone, and if you look at it, you look at bank branches are in the thousands zone, tens of thousands, and then branch ATM additions are only at a few hundreds. So the reasons are it takes a lot of money, it costs a lot to run an ATM, and it's not value accretive for a bank. So if you put up a branch, it can help with deposit mobilization, it can help with the branding, but ATM doesn't do too much to it. They a lot of banks put up ATMs only because RBI says this is the rule regulation, you have to have certain number of ATMs. Another reason they come up with is that digital payments have gone up so much that cash is no more that important. That is the argument a lot of banks come up with, but that's not seem to be true, because cash withdrawals have stayed at the same level. But ATMs are a costly affair because you have to run the cassettes, you have to fill it, and that is an expense which does not bring in any kind of revenue into the system. Branches obviously have a lot of walk-ins. Even today, physical branches matter a lot. So, what do you think, sir? You think they should stick to the no ATM strategy?
In fact, I'm surprised at what you've pointed out. That point completely missed me, but it's a very important point. 10 years ago, banks said we want more ATMs because it reduces the cost of staff in banks.
Right, right.
And they said because ATMs are cheaper, we will have more ATMs. Now suddenly they're singing a different tune. They say ATMs are expensive. So what happened to the story about bank staff costing more?
Because branches bring in deposits, ATMs are more about withdrawals, etc., etc. It is a convenience to the customer, but actually
Exactly.
to the bank it's not value accretive. Like you
I
don't
agree
gain
with you.
any revenue.
I agree with you. So banks are concerned about their own business rather than consumer convenience.
Convenience, right?
You're absolutely right, Katya. And it's sad to see banks doing this. And
It's a-
you have the same story about ATMs not functioning properly, money not being there all the time. And
right.
God. Anyway, thank you. Kate, got a great story. Thank you. And let's go to the third one, which is equally interesting, and that's by Anurag. Anurag, can we have you?
Good morning. There are some good news for the economy in the beginning of the week as trade deficit has witnessed a sharp fall of almost $5 billion as compared to April this year. This was mainly due to slowdown in imports, particularly oil and gold, whereas crude oil imports dropped by almost $6 billion, and and for the gold, the import fall by $600 million as compared to April. And India's service trade surplus was estimated around $14 billion in May from last month. Export performance was supported by strong growth in electronics, mainly mobile phones, chemicals, and pharmaceuticals, while trade with the United States expanded despite ongoing global policy uncertainties and potential US tariff hikes when the 90-day pause ends in July. Moreover, the Trade Ministry notes that bilateral trade talks with the US are progressing, with both sides aiming to expand market access and reduce tariffs. At the same time, wholesale price inflation eased to its lowest point in over a year, driven by declining food prices. The retail inflation based on the Consumer Price Index (CPI) dropped to 2.8%, the lowest since February 2019, though some categories like cooking gas saw slight increases. These are all great news for the country. And despite these positive macroeconomic indicators, the unemployment rate is still on the rise, growing month on month. Female unemployment is slightly higher at 5.8% as compared to 5.6% for male. This rise in joblessness comes as the government releases its first monthly labor force survey to monitor real time employment trends. The data represents a complex picture here. While trade and inflation numbers show improvement, the persistent rise in unemployment raises question about the inclusiveness of current economic recovery. As the trade deficit narrows and inflation eases, can India's growth momentum translate into more jobs across sectors, or will joblessness continue to limit our progress? What's your take on this, sir?
These are mixed signals, but what is important is that trade deficit has declined because imports have declined. And India is an import intensive country. When imports decline, it means your industrial production will also decline. When oil declines, it means industry did not need that much of oil. So, again, the good news masks bad news. And India has to be careful. And unemployment, tackling unemployment is crucial. Anyway, thank you very much, Anurag. Great, great story. And now let's go to some of the questions that are coming. The first question is, why is Trump creating this trouble? You want my personal take on it? Trump wants a war. If the war begins and if you time it properly, he can be a wartime president with a third term. And of course, just like he's used Zelensky, he's now using Israel. Israel is in danger of losing everything. America cares for nobody except itself, not even Israel. Anyway, let's go to the second question. And the second question is on banks. And why are banks not expanding ATMs in such a way that can also mobilize deposits? You can bring in the messages in ATMs. Your take.
It's a very good question, actually. But ATMs are humanless. They are just machines. So they cannot offer the, probably in areas, especially there are certain pockets of India where deposit mobilization is happening in interesting ways, thanks to trust by small finance banks. ATMs will not be able to do the job, is my personal
Correct.
beliefs. You need humans to actually, encourage, goad, or explain people, because FD might look like a simple product, but there are various options which need to be explained. ATM cannot do, as of now, machines can't do what humans do, especially with building trust.
Thanks, Katya. You're right about that. Let's take the third question. And the third question is there any way that India can galvanize its industrial production? Yes, India can do many things. India could make things easier for businessmen. India could lower the GST rates. And India could make sure that farm sectors are protected and allowed to grow. The policies for farms is only subsidies and things like that. That vision is missing. But anyway, that's another story. And I'd like to bring an end to this session because we're already out of time. Thanks for watching. And yes, do remember, click the subscribe button, the like button, and tell your friends about us. Have a wonderful day ahead. Enjoy yourself. See you tomorrow. We look forward to it. Take care.